Obi-Wan Kenobi's newest adventure is finally here with a 2-episode premiere that probably is the most concise and to the point of any of the Star Wars shows to date. The show sees Ben Kenobi approached by a familiar family after their daughter is kidnapped, and he is the only one who can help rescue her. But what none of them know is that this is all a ploy by Reva, an Inquisitor who will stop at nothing, including going against the Grand Inquisitor, to get a hold of Kenobi on behalf of her true master, Darth Vader. Director of the entire series, Deborah Chow, wastes no time getting right into the story and setting up our premise, and admittedly I was really on the fence about Kenobi leaving Tatooine and watching out for Luke, particularly since it's been done before in the Legends series, in a series of books which saw him engage in all sorts of high stakes action and adventure with characters like Boba Fett and various other bounty hunters and Jedi and Sith. It was something that I felt really went against Obi-Wan's message of staying hidden and hiding out as a Jedi and to protect Luke, but also wasn't really particularly well written and was very fan servicey. The new series, however, takes a lot of those worries into consideration, since I'm sure many other people had those worries as well, and it makes a point to show Ben is done with being a Jedi, to the point where he hasn't even used the Force in 10 years, and when a Jedi actually seeks him out, he tells him that they have to give up being a keeper of the peace. It's a fantastic look at a man whose entire life was taken from him, but instead of dying at the end of it, he lived on. So what does a man like that become after all of that? And the answer is a rather sad, lonely man who probably suffers from some sort of intense PTSD. Out of all of the Star Wars shows to date, Kenobi feels like the most real, and that's probably going to sound weird to a lot of people, being that it's a show set in a galaxy far away. But what I really mean are the characters are intensely relatable in many ways, particularly Kenobi, who is now working a dead-end, low-paying job, sleeping on a shitty mattress in a shitty place in the back end of the galaxy. That's incredibly relatable to many people, I'm sure. On top of that, we have Owen Lars, who has been put in a very difficult situation but is trying to make the best of it, and having seen what the Jedi have done to Anakin and Shmi and just the Skywalkers in general, he wants none of that for Luke and will do anything to protect his son and his wife Beru. This relatability I think comes from the show's influences, whereas Mando and the Book of Boba Fett were influenced by westerns and samurai films and gangster films like Goodfellas and The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, which are filled with much spectacle and adventure. But from Kenobi's influences, they're still rooted in westerns and samurai films, but more refined versions of those genres, like The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, or The Proposition, movies where the characters are spotlighted over the actual setting that the movie takes place in. The restraint the show has when it comes to certain things like fan service is so refreshing as well. It's not constantly batting you over the head with references and characters appearing and everything. There are some, and it's done really well, as they are used to push the plot forward in certain points, such as the opening Order 66 sequence, which no doubt is connected to Reva's backstory, or the fact that Kenobi runs into a Clone Wars veteran who is now homeless and destitute and living on the street, and it has a great moment where he perfectly shows sadness and remorse and anger and fear all in just the look he gives this veteran. It's wonderful. Kenobi doesn't even ignite a lightsaber at all over these two parts, and again it feeds into the show's influences, where when a weapon is used in The Proposition or The Assassination of Jesse James, it's a big moment, like how they did in these episodes with Kenobi using the Force. It's a big moment that happens at an important part of the story, and it builds that he's kind of coming back into the Kenobi we've seen in the prequel trilogy and in the Clone Wars, and I like that we're kind of going back to that. Now, it would be wrong for me not to talk about the performances, and Ewan Mcgregor returns to the role of Obi-Wan as if he never even left it. I like the Obi in this is a little bit more like Alec Guinness in A New Hope, especially in the voice, and I loved his rather reserved approach to the role. He's always very quiet, and the words he says all have a certain meaning, so he's not wasting any time or anything, and it's very cool. Ewan played really well off Vivian Blair, who plays the young Leia Organa, really channeling Carrie Fisher here as this feisty little girl who wants to break free of her confines on Alderaan and explore the galaxy, but she doesn't realize how big the galaxy galaxy actually is, and I'm intrigued to see this sort of connection, since I kind of feel like there's a comparison to be made between Mando and Grogu as well, whereas here it's a little bit more open since you have Leia who can actually talk and emote properly. She's not a puppet or anything, so I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do with that partnership. Moses Ingram steps into the role of Reva, the new Inquisitor, and she is quite wonderful. I love the rage she exudes and how she has the balls to even disobey the Grand Inquisitor, something we see right from the get-go of her character, and I like that she's not just sort of a cut and dry Inquisitor who's following the rules or anything, and she reminds me a lot of Trilla from Jedi Fallen Order, and I'm wondering if they're going to kind of borrow stuff from Trilla's arc and kind of reshape it into what Reva can be, because there is backstory there with her and Obi-Wan, and it's very possible that Reva is, like most Inquisitors, a Jedi who turned to the dark side, or she was a Padawan who turned to the dark side, so I'm looking forward to seeing her story develop alongside Obi-Wan's. Rupert Friend joins the cast as the Grand Inquisitor, and Rupert doesn't do a Jason Isaacs impersonation, being that Jason Isaacs voiced the Grand Inquisitor in the Rebels cartoon, and I appreciate that he makes the role his own without changing anything about it. I still feel that sort of regal nature that the Grand Inquisitor had, that regal nature, but he is still very savage and like an animal searching for his prey. I really liked his role in this. It was very minimal, and it ends in a pretty shocking way that I'm very much looking forward to seeing expanded on next week, since we know what becomes of him later in Rebels, so I'm intrigued to see how they're actually going to play with what happened to him. Jimmy Smits returns as Bail Organa and is as charming as ever. I love Jimmy Smits in any role he plays, and I loved his scenes here with Leia, and he just exudes this great fatherly warmth and wisdom, and he was a great addition to the cast. Obi-Wan Kenobi episodes 1 and 2 were a fantastic beginning to the 6-part event series, getting straight into the story and not wasting any time with anything else, and setting up where our characters are in this part of the timeline extremely well. I thoroughly enjoyed getting to see Ewan McGregor again as Obi-Wan Kenobi, as he was one of the very few shining lights of the prequel trilogy for me, and the new characters they're introducing in Reva are all very interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing where we're going to go with this series over the next 4 episodes. I'm going to give both these episodes a 10 out of 10.